Township Council is here, and I could just ask our Township Council to stand. I don't want to introduce all of them individually, but thank you for the support. And of course, our former mayor, Susan Bassett-Billy. And then we have freeholder Jeff Nash and Scott McRae. Assemblywoman Pam Lampin. And of course, members of our Cherry Hill Fire Department and the commissioners of the fire department, I know are in the back. And our all-important Cherry Hill African American Civic Association. If you would please rise for a second. Association has done so much for this town and has worked with me so closely with our council. And of course, in Joyce's memory, they have been so supportive. And Joyce was such an active member in everything that they did. And it really is a show of how this community has come together and the diversity of this community and the way the leadership of the African Americans Civic Association pulls together this community in so many positive ways. And I thank you for being here, of course, and showing your support. And of course, all the members of the Walker family and the Alexander families, if you would just stand, be recognized. We are all here this morning because in one way or another, for one reason or another, Joyce touched all of our lives, leaving behind an indelible mark that has influenced all of us for the better. Each of us had the privilege of knowing Joyce, remembering her in so many tremendous ways. Her incredible spirit and her incredible vibrance and personality that she had. We remember her as an embodiment of community service, as represented here today. Someone who moved and inspired almost everyone she met. Joyce was a trailblazer, as you'll hear from some of our speakers today, and a fierce advocate for the things and the causes she believed in. She was a fighter in the absolute best sense of the word, and her community is a better place to live in because of the work she did during her time here on Earth with us. While we still miss her deeply, I know that we are all proud today to forever memorialize Joyce's contributions and her legacy of service to Cherry Hill and to Camden County. As mayor, I am proud to honor our friend in this way. And now I'd like to introduce our former mayor, Susan Bassett-Billy.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Did you better than that?
Morning.
Since I've never seen a program that I couldn't change on the spot, I'd like to call upon Father Peter from St. Bartholomew's, Joyce's church. He's here with us, and I asked him if he would share a few words with an invocation. So,
Praying among
Joyce is under God.
Let us pray. Our Father God, we thank you for the diversity of your creation. We thank you for creating each of us. We thank you for creating Joyce, that we might see through her the beauty of your creation. Let her be a reminder to us that each of us is a facet of that creation, through whom the light of glory is to filter. We pray that you will always keep Cherry Hill an open and welcoming community, that your glory may be known among us. I pray. Amen.
A few other introductions. We have some former council members here who served with Joyce, so I'd ask those who are former council members to please stand because honor that is signed by the Speaker of the General Assembly and Steve Sweeney, the President of the Senate, and I know Assemblywoman Pam Lampick brought it here today. I won't read it out loud because it's long, but it's all about Joyce. And we will make sure that we circulate it through the township and we will give it to you as well. So thank you. It really is so fitting and appropriate that we gather here together today to dedicate this special room in honor and in memory of Joyce Alexander Walker. She was, as the mayor said, a trailblazer. She was a fighter. She was someone who took a position, stood her ground, but knew when to compromise to get something done. She was a friend to so many of us and really did make a difference in this town. I first met her when she became involved in small business activities in the Chamber of Commerce here because she owned a small business. And she was determined to move this town forward, to make this town more business friendly. She was then, and always was, a bit ahead of her time. I then came to know her because she served on our Citizens Advisory Board, along with many of you in this room who served on that Citizens Advisory Board. The great thing about Joyce is she always had a thoughtful, reasoned opinion. She looked at the facts, she looked at the history, she looked at the future, and she was never afraid to state her mind, but always did it in a way that was persuasive. Always did it in a way that was respectful, and always did it in a way that pushed the agenda forward. I loved working with her. We argued about so many things. And then we would go have coffee and just enjoy being friends. She was brilliant, accomplished, and humble. Never showing off, even though she had so much that she could show off. She loved when her grandchildren came to live with her. And so then it consumed all of her conversations, as it does for all of us grandparents. So Malcolm, we're so happy that you're here. One of the great things about Joyce is that she was a woman of principle. One of the things that we talked about at the advisory board for several years was the need for a new library and the need to bring the town together. Seemingly two different issues. But Joyce was one of a group of people who understood that those issues could come together. That instead of having one library for the west side of town and one library for the east side of town, we could have one terrific, fabulous library. And there were naysayers and people who said it couldn't be done or shouldn't be done. But none of that mattered to Joyce because she knew it was the right thing to do. She was part of a council along with Steve Barbell and Dave Fleischer and Marlin and others who said, let's take the library we have, remember that little old library? And let's buy the land that Richmond's ice cream parlor stood on. It was closed, so for those of you who like ice cream, we didn't do anything against it. And build this library where we are today. And it didn't matter to Joyce if people said to her, you shouldn't do it, you couldn't do it. She knew it was the right thing. And as I've said before, she would speak truth to power. Even after I had left the mayor's office and I was in Trenton, I knew that I could always count on Joyce to do the right thing. And I could always count on Joyce for a great argument. She was one of the first supporters in this area of Barack Obama, now President Obama, which is why they're here. This is not a political statement, this is a statement of Joyce's principles and commitment. And man, could she organize. There was nobody better than Joyce Alexander Walker in terms of organizing, setting a plan, implementing a plan, and twisting your arm until you agreed with them. And so today, as we dedicate this very special multicultural room in this very special library, we owe a debt of gratitude to Joyce. 2 of the pieces of art on the wall, the 2 of the families are actually on loan from Felton. They were Joyce's art, and we wanted to share them with you. The other pieces of art are from the township's collection, and they reflect the diversity of our community. But today, as we come together to remember Joyce, we do it not with sadness, we do it with celebration, because she left her mark on this town. She led the way. She was indeed a trailblazer. She was indeed a woman of valor. She was indeed a good friend to so many of us. And we will miss her, but we will always celebrate her accomplishments and her life. Thanks, Felton, for joining us. I'd now like to call upon my friend Steve Barbell, who was a president of the library board. Art Simon's the president now, is out of town. And also a member of the town council for many years, council president and vice president, and also president of the West Zone PTA, right? PTA. And of the Cherry Hill Steve.
Thank you, Susan. First, I bring greetings from former mayor and currently the library president, Art Simons, who sends his warmest greetings to the Walker family, the Alexander family, and the friends who have all gathered here today. Due to a previous commitment, like Susan said, Art could not be present here this morning. I also welcome Joyce's family, friends, and all who are here today to celebrate this much-deserved honor in Joyce's memory. The first step that we took when this library was first planned was to have a series of focus groups. And the focus groups were representative of the many varied educational, social, religious, ethnic, and neighborhood communities that comprise Cherry Hill Township. We must have had about 8 or 10 of these groups, and Joyce was on several of them. These focus groups emphasize their groups' individual feelings as how this new library could best satisfy the individual community needs of the present and a vision for the future. As I thought back on what these needs and visions were, I can vividly remember that the feelings of all the focus groups were in very large part expressed in the terms of the cultural makeup of each group. Of all these focus groups, the need for attention to the cultural desires of all aspects of the Cherry Hill community was most emphatically verbalized by Joyce Alexander Walker at several of these meetings. As Susan said, when Joyce spoke, people listened. And Joyce had that foresight to realize that for a library to represent the entire community, it had to represent all cultural, ethnic, neighborhood, so forth, views. Therefore, it's most fitting that this multicultural room of the Cherry Hill Library be dedicated to Joyce Alexander Walker, who so well understood that the backbone and heart of Cherry Hill were the many varied cultural communities which in effect are Cherry Hill. I thank you all for coming, and I think this is a very, very fitting tribute for somebody who meant so much to this community.
With Steve and I, right in the beginning, was a councilman named Howard Haas. Some of you may remember him. He lived in the Kingston neighborhood for many years, and he was an old-time liberal Democrat, but he was a party guy, and he believed in the system. He decided that he was going to retire, and so we thought about who should replace him. A couple of us sort of sat around, threw out names, and Joyce's name always came to the top of the list. Some of you know the story. But Howard had been around a long time. He lived in Kingston, as did Joyce, and I felt, out of respect, I needed to go to Howard, make sure he was okay with it. Now, I adored Howard, and I would say this if he were here. He was often grumpy. And very opinionated. And so, I don't scare easy, but I must tell you, I was more than a little nervous about going to Howard Haas with this idea. I work up all of these arguments. I tell him she's a Princeton grad. He didn't live there, but she's a Princeton grad. I tell him what she had done, and he had worked with her. But when I finish, well, actually, he doesn't even let me finish, I should be clear, because he interrupts me midway through, and he says to me, "It's about time." And so Joyce ran for council. The rest is history, as they say. But one of the young men who served with Joyce Alexander Walker was our friend Dave Fleischer, the council president.
This will actually be one of the shortest speeches that I've ever given. And it's not because Susan said that it needed to stay brief, which she did, but because both Jen and Merrill said I couldn't cry. So I'll make sure I don't. But it is absolutely terrific to be here among so many friends and for so many people for so many years. Believe it or not, it is 10 years ago, April, that Joyce stood shoulder to shoulder with several of us in this room and made sure that this building, this wonderful place, became a reality. And it is very fitting that this place, this room, is dedicated to such a terrific public servant and to such a wonderful person. A room that really represents some of the things that were most important to Joyce and are important to so many of us. Education, celebrating our differences, and of course, a sense of community. And that really is what Joyce was all about. So for me, as we dedicate the room tonight, and hopefully today, and hopefully for many of you, this room simply ensures that Joyce will continue to stand shoulder to shoulder with all of us in all the days ahead. So thank you for being here, for being part of it, and for Felton for allowing us to be part of your family.
We lost a dear friend in the past few weeks, someone who served with Joyce, Councilman John Amato. And so I would just ask for a brief moment of silence in his memory and honor. Do you hear those jingle bells? The mayor spoke about the African American Civic Association, and they certainly have been a leader in Cherry Hill for many years. I can remember going to their scholarship balls at the old Sheridan Hotel and meeting so many wonderful people. I can remember one of the very first community coffees I went to was at the home of Arthur and Evelyn Lewis. And Evelyn sat me down and told me what it would take to be a good councilwoman, and then she chronicled my entire life in pictures. I used to joke with her, she had every hair color and every wig that I ever had in her photo album. And now I'd like to call upon Pat McCargo, representing the Cherry Hill African Americans.
To Felton and the Alexander family, and Mayor and former Mayor Levin, and council members and fire commissioners. I've been greetings on behalf of the Cherry Hill African American Civic Association. Today is kind of complex for me. When I got up, I was heavy-hearted, thinking about what we were going to do today. And I looked outside, and it's raining. I thought to myself, how fitting, because that's what I was doing inside, crying. Crying tears of sadness because I miss Joyce so much, but crying tears of joy because of what was about to take place today. How fitting. Just look around this room. Look at the diversity. Look at the diversity. It is fitting that this room be named in Joyce's honor. Joyce and I met at a Cherry Hill School Board function. And the district was looking for individuals who would serve as community participants in searching for a school superintendent. And so Joyce and I served on the panel, we looked around, we said to her, do you know anything about these candidates? Not one person of color. Not one person of color was among them. So there began our relationship. We went back and forth about the candidates that they did have on the table, what they would bring to the table, what they couldn't bring to the table, and their vision for each other. And during those conversations, one day I went over to her and I said, Joyce, I said, let me tell you something. You know what I think? You have to. You simply have to run for council. She said, I don't know that. I said, Joyce, you are I don't know that. I said, will you just think about it? Please just think about it. She did. And thanks to Susan Bass-Levin, the rest is history. Most recently, 2 years ago, Joyce and I had a conversation because I got a phone call from my doctor, something no one ever wants to hear. You have cancer. And I was floored, you know, and thinking to myself, what do I do? So I knew of Joyce's battle. And I picked up the phone and I called her and I said, Joyce, I said, you know, I just got a diagnosis from my doctor. I have cancer. And I said, I hate to. She said, Pat, don't you worry about it. What can I do for you? And while she herself was struggling with her own disease, she took the time to encourage me. And I thought to myself, if Joyce can do this, I certainly can do this. So I said, what did you do? Who did you talk to? She said, Pat, call Susan. I said, Joyce, I don't have Susan's telephone number. So she said, I will give you both numbers. And with that, I called Susan, and thanks to Susan, I got what has been known, my friends would say, how did you get to 18? No, Susan Bass-Levin. And because of Joyce, my journey was so much easier. I could talk to Joyce, I could talk to Susan, and she wrapped her arms around me. And that's just evidence of who Joyce Walker was. She was always thinking of others. She worked with me hand in hand, and we stood shoulder to shoulder with the district in trying to enforce and to make them aware of what was needed in terms of cultural diversity in the school district. She served with me on the Minority Achievement Committee. We worked together on cultural conditions. And one thing Joyce did not want to hear is folks say, I'm going to be tolerant. I don't want you to be tolerant for me. I want you to respect me for my diversity, for who I am. And so those memories I will always hold dear for Joyce Alexander Walker. She was one in a million. I told Susan earlier, you know what I miss? I have to tell you this is really funny, because when Joyce and I first met, I was a registered Republican. so you know her and I had some go-rounds. Joyce, you know, and actually I was a registered Republican because the former mayor, John Rocco, took little old me who knew nothing about politics, just knew that I needed a job and took me in. Now, I said to John, when John was the spearhead for Ronald Reagan, I said, listen here, John, you can't expect me to go back to my community beating drums for Ronald Reagan. I said, so the best I can do for you is step back. So Joyce and I had these conversations, and we went back and forth and back and forth. She said, Pat, you're not a Republican. You know, just listening to you talk, why are you a Republican? I said, because my father was a Republican. But ultimately, I changed my party. I'm out there beating the drums, but as Joyce and Susan knows this, I don't blindly vote for anybody. I listen to what the candidates say and vote my conscience and my heart, and I think that's what Joyce was working with. So today, while this is mixed feelings, that we have to put up something that designates this multicultural in honor of Joyce, I miss her dearly. But when I come here, I can feel a spirit and feel a calmness that comes over me, knowing that Joyce is still right here on my shoulder. And I hope that if you take anything away from this event, is that embrace your culture, embrace the diversity in this township, be all-inclusive, and never forget where Joyce was, what she believed in, and how she lived her life. And I say to you, Joyce would not, you all know this, Joyce would not want us to be here making this big fuss over her. I know she kind of like, no, I don't need all that. Because when I said to her, Joyce, you're the first African-American elected to council on the Civic Association, we were jumping for joy. Yay, 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 about time. Joyce said, yeah, that's wonderful, but we're not going to talk about that. Because Joyce went and did what she believed was the best, not just for people of color, but for everybody in this township. And so when you leave out of here, I hope that you will take part of that and make that your mission. When you look at your boards, and you look at your government, and you look at your lifestyles, and in particular, let me share this one thing before I go. When Joyce was getting very, very ill, her and Bill had a conversation, and she said to Bill, you know what I need? Bill said, Joyce, what can I do for you? She said, anything I can do. She said, Bill, you know what you could do for me? And she said, Joyce, what's that? She said, you could run for fire commissioner. And so Bill said, fire commissioner? He said, I run for the fire commissioner, that's your seat. And so she said, no, just tell me that you will consider running for fire commissioner. And when Joyce passed, he toyed with that back and forth, should I or shouldn't I? But here again, that little voice was saying to him, someone needs to do this, and I have asked you. And so Bill ran for fire commissioner, and today he is fire commissioner. And to each of you, I say, I believe that one voice is too small or can't be heard. I think you all know that Mayor Khan has an open door. He has conversations with us and conversations with this community, so that you can always reach out across the aisles, no matter where you are in your life. This council and this mayor embrace their diversity as their choice. So with that, I thank you all for coming. This is quite an honor for Joyce and Phil. Thank you.
That she was on a mission to convert you. But Joyce was someone who reached deep down and out of herself to help others, even when she was in pain herself. And she didn't show it, and she didn't want you to know, and she wanted to just go about and do her business. She was so proud to serve on the Fire Commission. She was so proud to be a member of the African American Civic Association. She loved her time on council. She loved her family. She was someone who gave her all. And we all will be forever indebted to her for that. I remember the first time I went with her to her church. And she brought me to the church. They went through the service, and then at the end of the service, they were talking about a community service project that they were doing. I think it was collecting toys for kids. And she said, we need to do more of this in this town. It can't be just the churches doing it. It has to be the community doing it. And I thought at the time how she was able to take her faith and her belief and make it part of what she did throughout this entire community. And it's really a lesson that we could all learn from. I'd now like to introduce to you someone who clearly needs no introduction here, and that's her husband, Felton, who put up with all of her stuff and all of her meetings, came along to many of them, was truly part of our Cherry Hill family. And we are so appreciative to you for loaning us some of her artwork. There's also a piece over here. And for really being her rock, because you were her rock. Belton, you'll join us.
Good afternoon.
Amen.
This is an emotional moment for me, so forgive me. First, I'd like to thank each of you for making this day possible. And as I was listening to the different conversations about Joyce, and one of the reasons she loved the library is when she was a young kid, her mother would send her down to Hertford, North Carolina, because her mother was a school teacher, she had to work. And Joyce and her sister read every book in the Hertford Library. And when I met her down in Silver Springs, Maryland, I bet you she had over 500 books in her own personal library. A lot of them she's, given away. But she was always a reader. And so that's what I want to say about that. Joyce Alexander, my wife, my friend, my soulmate, had a very simple philosophy on life. Treat people the way you like to be treated. She believed in the inherent goodness of mankind. Her favorite scripture was Luke 12th chapter, 48th verse. Too much is given, much more is expected. Joyce was a leader who was blessed with so many talents, skills, and excellent qualities. And one of her primary qualities, she had a lot of integrity. She would not compromise her position. She had love, kindness, and as so many of you know, she had a lot of intellect and wisdom. She also had political astuteness. She had the nature of a lion to drive away the wolves. She had the nature of a fox to avoid the trap. She was sensitive to the needs of others and had the ability to articulate her ideals and positions effectively. Life for Joyce was like a triangle. It had length, breadth, and height. The length of life deals with the selfish dimension of life, things that you do for yourself. The breadth of life deals with your relationship with your friends, family, and others. The height of life deals with your relationship with God, your upward reach. And that's what encompasses her life. Joyce knew the privilege of a lifetime is to be who you are. She listened to the tune of her own drummer. Joyce taught us, life is a song, sing it. Life is a challenge, meet it. Life is a dream, realize it. Life is a sacrifice, offer it. Life is love, enjoy it. In closing, if I could have one last conversation with my friend, I would say 5 things. 1, girl, you know you stopped the traffic in all directions on the day of your funeral. People were saying, Who in the hell is that leading that parade? Two, your P doctor, he called him the P doctor, and that was Dr. Patel, who was her urologist. He came to your funeral. He was so touched by Joyce in terms of the love, the relationship, and it was really a very special bond. Three, your obituary was read on the Tom Joyce show, and it was syndicated all across the country. And fourth, I received a letter of condolence from your president and first lady. And fifth, I will say that I love you and I'm okay.
So heartfelt, so meaningful for all of us. And I think this is going out extremely incredible. Thank you so much for sharing Joyce with us and those words. And so as I sit and listen about Joyce's desire and love of this library, it's so fitting that the way I think of the library today is not just as a library, it's a community center. And that's what Joyce really would have wanted, a community center. And that's what this has evolved into all these years later. A center, a room, a building for all of us, for the entire community. And here it is today, in Joyce's memory. We come together as a community to remember her, to honor her, to memorialize her, never to forget her in our community center. And this is how it will always be remembered. And I thank you all for coming here and to taking this time to think of her, think of all of you, to take the time to speak about her, and each of you individually. It's been very, very special. So what I'd like to do now is, if we can, we're going to just kind of shift our way out into the hallway and just take a second and to dedicate the plaque that we have out on the wall. And if you notice above the room, you'll see the name of Joyce, the room dedicated to Joyce's name of the plaque in Joyce's memory.